What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball and New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I'm your host, Raphael Rattler, joined with my fellow middle brother, Garrett Jr. Rattler. What's popping with you, bro?
What up, bro? Oh, man, everything's all good on this side, man. I'm just coming off of a hellish travel week, man. Monday I was in Atlanta to see Beyonce. Shout out to Jay-Z. She bought our Hove. And then we flew from Atlanta and Beyonce to the scorcher that was Las Vegas for Summer League. And it was a great experience, man. I like I said, I'm a hoop junkie, so I love being around basketball and all of that, man. And just like the most basic essence of basketball, just everybody trying to prove something and show something off. But man, it's been a melancholy week and day for me, man. And one side, I want to give a shout out to the W in the All-Star game, man. It was great. It was fantastic. Wow. I enjoyed watching that. Then we move on a little forward, man, and we lost Malcolm Jamal Warner, which was a crazy news story to hit, man. Rest in peace to him, the legend from the Cosby Show. I was watching him on the show, Accused. If you haven't checked that out, go check his episode out. Man, just a really tough thing for me as a cinephile and as a guy who grew up on television and black television. He is one of the ones that was the staple of my growing up. So really tough news to hear about that. And then we move on, man. And listen, there's not a lot of things in life that make that age you other than I would say like getting married and having kids. Like those are adult decisions. But for us who don't have kids and who aren't married, one of the very niche things that you can feel to age you is when someone very closely retires, right? And Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, graduated in the same class of St. Aug. Shout out to 2600. If you know. And he called it a career today, man. And on one hand, I want to celebrate him for making it through an NFL career, an outstanding career. He got a chip, got some M's in the bank, got a potential Hall of Fame career. But damn, man, I'm damn, I had old number. Is this what's happening? So yeah, man, that news hit, and then obviously Jimmy Graham retiring. But all in all, it's gonna be wrapped up tight this week because Friday is Fantastic Four Day. So happy Fantastic Four week to anybody who celebrates outside of me. But yeah, man, ready to get into this NBA talk, man. The Pelicans Summer League has come and gone. And our latest example, speaking of the Saints, of the city of New Orleans having to pay the bill for the Sean Payton halftime prayer to Dormammu and Mephisto to get the Saints a Super Bowl. The Pelicans are now facing the yearly tax on that as well. So we'll get into that. How's everything on your side, man?
Yeah, man. Everything is blessed. Yeah, you're right. When we saw Derrick Queen walk out to the court, not in a uniform with his hand heavily wrapped, we're like, bro, that's not good.
I'm not going to lie. And it was a big old cast. It was a big old cast too. I was like, excuse me.
Yeah, surely thereafter we found a good live. We will get into that. Like you mentioned, Summer League was a lot of fun. If no one's ever been, I would highly encourage, especially if you got young children. It was my son's first Summer League, so he got to enjoy it. And again, if you're a hoops junkie and you're just there to watch the game, it's a lot of bad basketball. Be prepared for that. But it's also a really good time, and they do a really good job in terms of putting it on. So before we get into that, make sure you guys are following the show, liking the episode below. Make sure you're locked in. That's _basketball to me, because this basketball team is never boring. So let's get into the Summer League takeaways for the Pelicans right off the bat. So Derrick Queen, wrist injury. He's out for at least 12 weeks. Betting up until yesterday or a couple days ago. That puts him right around like the start of the season. So that means he's going to miss all of training camp. That means he's probably going to be reevaluated. So that means he's probably going to miss the first month of the season while he gets into basketball shape and the rhythm and things like that, and gets reacclimated to the team. Or I should say gets acclimated to the team, because he's not even played a minute with Zion and things like that. But let's talk about the Summer League piece of it first. Michael Peavy, I think he did some really good things. Didn't play that many games. He had a soft ankle issue. They played it safe. I think you saw a lot of what you need to see from him in terms of being an older player that can come in and can give you some hard defensive minutes and potentially some scoring. Let's start with Derrick Queen. Now, you and I were watching the Blazers game where him and Yang from the Blazers really put on a show, and it was crazy for those that didn't watch that game. The atmosphere in a summer league game where it felt like you were in China, because every time Yang touched the ball, he was going at it. But let's talk about Derrick Queen prior to that moment, because he was really serving him up buckets in a lot of ways and really outplayed him and was kind of teasing and playing with him a little bit. But of course, the storyline is not that. The storyline is, well, your wrist is broken, and now the Pelicans are doomed yet again. So what did you see as you wrapped up Summer League with Derrick Queen? And then we'll get to Jeremiah Fears.
Yeah, man, DQ is a bucket, and I think he's going to be all right. Again, there are a lot of the intangible things that he has to work on, and I think, this wrist injury, it sucks. It's the worst possible thing that could happen to a rookie as they start off their career, to have a major injury that sidelines you for this many weeks. But I do think this is an opportunity for him to do some growing in that side, where he could take some of this film that he saw and some of the good things that he did, and obviously scoring, the playmaking, being a hub offensively, being comfortable, being that. I think that was one of the more important things that we saw. He obviously, he had his turnovers and things like that. And that comes from young players and guys not knowing each other and things like that. And obviously he has some plays where it's a little bit like, okay, that was a reckless play, but it's a young player who's going to feel his way through those things. The things that you did see from him, you saw like a lot of good things from him: scoring, rebounding, a double-double every game. So at least that lets you know his floor, he's going to be rebounding. Whether, no matter how good the game is going, how bad the game is going, you can count on rebounding. And I think that's going to only improve when he, hopefully takes this time, goes into, the studio, and and look at the film and look at what he could have done better, right? Some of the times that he was pouting, or sometimes he didn't get back, or things like that. And then he can also focus on getting into condition to fix those things, right? Like, that's the biggest thing with him, is going to be getting into condition and getting into a body frame and a physical frame where, they feel comfortable throwing him out there and playing him for extended minutes. Because again, when he does get back, you're gonna need him to play. This isn't like a Jeremiah Fears problem where you have so many guards in front of him. You don't have a lot of bigs in front of Derrick Queen, especially with his skill set. You don't have any bigs that can do what he does. So I think you saw a lot of good from him. The competitive nature between this entire rookie class, really, but those two in particular, and then Derrick Queen, which we're talking about now, I think that is something that this team has needed. I don't think that the guys are not competitive, but they're competitive. They're loudly competitive when they need to be. Derrick Queen is loudly competitive at all times, and so is Jeremiah Fears. And like you said, you saw that against Hansen Yang. So I think that this, Derrick Queen, the player, if you remove it, take it from a vacuum, and again, the beginning of his career is already, you take two steps behind with the injury, and then also him being, Derrick Queen is not just Derrick Queen the player. It's Derrick Queen the player that you traded an unprotected first for. So he's going to have this unfair standard, these unfair expectations from him, and this kind of unfair kind of ruling of his rookie season. Already in the preseason, in the introductory presser, people were asking him about, hey, do you know you got attacked? They attacked under unprotected pick to get you, and he's already answering those questions without even putting the Pelicans jersey on. So he's gonna have those things heaped upon him, fair or not. But I think the player in it of itself, the skill set that you see, especially when you look at what the Pelicans need in their big man and how they need some flexibility in their big man. I think you saw a lot of good things from Derrick Queen, and a lot of intangible things that he needs to clean up, starting with his conditioning as well as his effort. But I think as he gets more into the NBA and Gilbert Arenas, I don't really like listening to Gilbert Arenas, but he made a good point where he said that Derrick Queen is one of those guys that you can't tell from one-on-one workouts and then having a lot of like non-skilled guys around him. He's more a guy that once you put him on with talent, and put him around players, he fits into a system well, and he can pass and do all those things. So he does well with better players on the floor. So I liked a lot of what I saw from Derrick Queen, obviously outside of the injury.
Right. Couple things. So, I put out a tweet as soon as the news broke about Derrick Queen being out for quite some time. And there was like some immediate reactions of, well, this gives him time for conditioning and stop overreacting. This is not a good thing, right? Like,
no, it's not. No, it's not.
You would want your rookies that you wanted to be a part of the rotation involved in training camp. It's like, yeah, you can, spend some extra time with the team and get to know the other guys and get to know each other and get to know each other on the court. But there's a difference between on-court chemistry and off-court chemistry, a la the Pelicans, right? Like the biggest issue with the Pelicans over the past couple of years is not lack of talent and ability, just those things isolated. It's the fact that they haven't been able to build chemistry together because they haven't played games together. And for a team that's looking to start off hot or at least start off in a stronger position than it has the past 10 years in a row, with some momentum, you would have wanted to get those weeks underneath your belt where you get to know each other. To your point, summer league is a little bit crazy. It's a lot of crazy, right? And it's a lot of unorganized, and guys are just meeting other guys for the first time and just playing with other guys. So they're throwing the ball over the court. But as you could see each game go by, you could see from Derrick Queen's game his understanding of both where he needs to be in respective to his teammates and him directing them around and orchestrating the offense around to where he needed to be. You don't get that, right, without training camp. There's a reason why you have all-stars and superstar players that are traded in the middle of the year, and you don't necessarily judge them based on the results of that season. You judge them based off the next season once you get a full training camp and you're able to incorporate yourself into the team. Well, now you're missing that element of on-court play for a player who, again, needs to know a little bit of the rhythm of his teammates, because that hub type offense is what you're looking out for him. So it's not a good situation, but to your point, if anything was going to happen in terms of what needed to happen from summer league to training camp, it was Derrick Queen needed to get in elite shape. And it couldn't be a Zion situation where you're looking year after year after year, or are you going to change your physique in order to give yourself the best opportunity to be available? Well, now with a wrist injury, yes, it still gives you the opportunity to improve your conditioning. But the other side of it is you've already seen this happen once. Derrick Queen, he called himself a fat boy when he looked at himself in film and said, hey, I got to get better. Going into Maryland, lost 20 pounds. You've seen it already happen once. Now he really has no excuse but to sit there and lock himself into the gym, right? And be ready as soon as the wrist heals up. So there's a silver lining to it, but it's still not a good situation because now you're down to Yves Missi and Carlo Makovich and Kevon Looney. That's it. Those are your front court players. And up until this point, the Pelicans have not added another body there. So if one of those guys is unavailable, then you're looking at Saddiq Bey. You're looking at Micah Peavy to guard some of these guys in the West, where every team looks to be starting 2 7-footers or to be rotating 3 or 4 of them. All of a sudden, you're immediately down another one, right? And so I'm interested, if something comes from that aspect, if there's another move to correspond with this injury, whether it's something small or not, but immediately that's a glaring hole. Now, as far as his game, I really liked what I saw from Derrick Queen. Yeah, there was some sloppiness. Yeah, there was some turnovers. Yeah, there's going to be defensive liability at times, but you could say that about probably every rookie in the NBA going into next season and in the past as well. But in terms of like just his pure game on the court, what he was able to show in summer league and how it could translate to the league, when you ask the peers of this draft class, what character trait would you take from a different player? There were several players that mentioned I would take the footwork and the playmaking from a Derrick Queen, right? Those are high lottery picks, all aiming to take one particular skill. That type of stuff translates. Like, again, it's going to be a growing curve on the defensive end, but if you're able to come in and Give me something on the offensive end, which again, and we'll get to, the Pelicans have been lacking for quite some time, a punch off the bench who can generate their own as a bigger body. If you're able to take that into the first month or two of the season once he gets back, I think that's another answer to the test that the Pelicans, again, desperately need. Now, Jeremiah Fears was the other big name prospect that for the Pelicans and big name throughout all the summer league. Played all 5 games. Some of the other players did not. I think he needed to play all 5 games.
He's the only lottery pick to do it.
Right. I think he needed to play all 5 games, and you start to see him get a little bit more in a rhythm, a little bit more comfortable as that went on. What were your parting things from Jeremiah Fears heading into the lull of the offseason?
Yeah, I think what I explained to one of my friends when I was talking about Jeremiah Fears, he is an NBA player, and it is no question about it. He definitely is an NBA player. He definitely plays a brand of Y in basketball. He definitely does. He definitely does do that. And I think that is he is the perfect blend of he's too young to know any better and it being a good thing and a bad thing, both at the same time. It being a blessing and a curse. He's like the poster child of it, because on one side you love the fact that like he's uber competitive. He doesn't he don't tolerate no disrespect. If you know, you know. But his competitive nature is what's going to make him great. It's going to make him, if he's going to reach that level, it's because he just has a tenacious competitive nature about him that makes him like continuously go at you and take on any kind of responsibility. He's fearless, right? He wears it on the back of his jersey, and apparently he wears it around his neck or as a tattoo too. So like that is who he is, right? Coming with a big chain in, saying I'm the best player in this draft class. That is who he is. But sometimes that spills over, and it can be a negative. And you see sometimes him pushing pushing the envelope a little too much, right? Getting out of his comfort zone, stop focusing on the game and turning it into I'm better than you matchup. And again, at points on a court, ask Deion Sanders, people who coach Deion Sanders, ask people who coached Allen Iverson. As you have to have that kind of mentality a little bit, especially when you're a small guard in a game that's full of giants like Victor Wembanyama. Like you have to be able to hold your own physically and mentally. But there is a line that you don't want to cross. You don't want to stop, being a part of the team, pushing towards one agenda and start veering off into your own. And I think that's where like a guy like Jordan Poole, who came into the league in his first couple of years, had that kind of mentality, like going at people and like scoring and making it a one-on-one and playing unserious basketball at times. And then he grew up and molded into a championship winning, piece. And I think that's something that Jordan Poole can wrap his arm around Jordan Fears and Jeremiah Fears and have him kind of, walk that same path along with him. Now, as far as on the court, the handle is NBA top level. It's there. There were times where he was snaking in between in between defenders and around getting around screens and he just it felt like it was on a string. Right now, his passes, again, ambitious. Some of them are ambitious. There were times. I think what was the last game? The game before that. What was the game of who they played? Whoever they played that second to last game, where him and Trey Alexander, OKC, right, where him and Trey Alexander had the big game. And there were times where he would get into the lane and hit people for kick out threes, and I was like jumping in the air, and he's one of those guys where like him jumping in the air for like 99% of the players is a bad idea, and like he's like 0.5%. But there's a 0.5% of that for him. That's a good idea because he is so creative and so fearless with his passes that he can jump up and hit people at the last minute. And that's how Trey Alexander got so many wide open threes. And other shooters got a lot of open shots. So I liked a lot of what I saw from him. I like the fact that he plays like he tries to make plays defensively. Again, there's gonna be a size deficiency that he's just gonna have to deal with. No matter how many weights he lifts, no matter how big he gets from now into training camp, it's just gonna be there. But can you get, be active, be quick with your hands? Can you get into passing lanes? Can you do things like that? And I think he does have an acumen for that. And so there are things that I saw from him that I like. I think there are things that are 99 percentile in the NBA. His quickness, his handles, those are checkmark NBA things. The shot is not one of them. That is not one of those things that is there. And that is one of the things that I am we talked about in the pre-draft. We were concerned about. I'm still very much concerned about that. But his ability to get into the lane and find people and his just strictly hooper gamer mentality, I love. I think you need that on this team. Him and Derrick Queen should be able to do some things together when they finally eventually get on the court and do some things when you're surrounded by shooters like Trey and Hawk and Jordan Poole and guys like that. So there's a lot to like about him. But again, the shot I'm concerned about a little bit rampant. Again, I would much have to ramp his competitive nature down than have to ramp it up. But I do think that there needs to be a little bit of maturing. And again, he's the youngest, probably the youngest player in the draft, should be going into college right now. So a lot of that is just he has to grow up like all of us had to grow up, in life. And he has a long runway to do that, with the Pelicans. And so I do think that that's going to get better. But I love his competitive nature and I love his gamesmanship.
Yeah, I mean, again, and you're right. Other than Cooper Flag, he's the youngest player in the draft for a reason. The biggest thing that stood out to me, you're right about his quickness, you're right about his handle, you're right about the jumper, and it needs work, both the catch and shoot and the off the dribble. He just wasn't shooting it with confidence in the summer league. But the difference between like a year ago when you saw Jordan Hawkins in the summer league and the Pelicans said, Hawk, we want to see you as more of an off the dribble guy. What can you do? Put him in an uncomfortable situation just to see what his expansion is. I watched Jeremiah Fears, and while his best asset is probably his ability to get to the rim, because again, 6 free throws a game, like clockwork, got to the line consistently finished in tough situations, some super tough situations, finished consistently over and over. So that seems to be real for me. But the thing where I think is a little bit different than the year before in Jordan Hawkins is I think that there's a true point guard in Jeremiah Fears. Like right now, he plays more like a scorer that mandates the have to shoot 20 times a game type thing. And I think once he's able to, again, grow up a little bit and figure out himself in the NBA and understand the balance there, to your point, he sees the floor so well. And I wish sometimes he would lend to the playmaking side a little bit more, and just as much as he does the scoring, right? They're both going to be there, and the people who are able to weaponize their ability to make good decisions on the fly, those are the ones that tend to be successful, especially to your point, the smaller guards, the Ja Morants, the brash guy, the Jalen Brunsons. Those guys are phenomenal decision makers with the ball, right? And so that's the area where I think for Jeremiah Fears, it's probably not going to come in year 1. It's probably not going to come in year 2. But you were looking for that element of growth in him. That's kind of that ticket mark there. The other part of it, we were worried about the size, but like I said, Garrick, through 5 games, I know this is not the NBA talent, and there's much bigger players ahead. But I didn't feel his lack of size. He is. I said it on previous pods. He's often the aggressor. Anytime there's contact offensively or defensively. Now he gambles a lot on defense, but he's awfully taking the action to him. And for the guy who's normally the smallest guy on the court, that's a good sign, right? You can only hope that you continue to grow and continue to put on strength and all the things that everybody talks about offseason. But I didn't feel the way you felt in Jordan Hawkins when he was given the ball in summer league and things like that. So I think that lends to that as well. But again, how Jeremiah Fears does in his initial campaign, in training camp and preseason and things like that, I think to your point, because there are some other options in front of him, it's not like a do or die thing for the Pelicans. But in the spirit of dying for the Pelicans, apparently this offseason, the New Orleans Pelicans have had the worst offseason of all time across the league. Like they're kind of the laughing stock, no matter what show you listen to, what podcast you listen to, everyone's got a budding joke for the Pelicans. And like, I'm looking at it and I'm just like, I get it. There's a huge risk. And now Derrick Queen's hurt. And it's like, okay, that looks bad too. But again, this is a roster who, again, Seth Green, he called one of the Pelicans game. He's like, man, look at all these guys that miss games. If these guys, these are playmaking and win changing players. If these guys are on the court, they're a much different team. Now, that being said, the team that won 49 years ago is gone. Like, this team looks completely different. So to say that, hey, this is the same team from 2 years ago, it just got hurt, is incorrect. But at the same time, like, I don't think that the sky is falling either, right? I look at the roster and I see a lot of talent. I see a lot of question marks for sure. But what are some of the things that, like, we entered the offseason saying the Pelicans need to get better at, or the Pelicans need to improve in these particular areas? Let's start there and see the track record of what was done this offseason. So far, the number one thing was health. You've seen Yves Missi, again, playing in minutes and looking more confident, right? There's still some things for him to improve in, but he looks at a different confidence level, which is what we were asking for out of that particular player. You've seen Trey Murphy after his injury, getting shots up, shooting in the gym. Again, context, we're still waiting on that, but you're waiting from that. You've seen Jordan Hawkins. You've seen Jordan Poole. You've seen Jose Alvarado. You've seen Saddiq Bey, 17 months coming off the ACL injury. You haven't seen Herb Jones dribbling the ball and shooting the ball a whole lot, but you've seen pictures of him coming off the injury. So in terms of health, it seems like the Pelicans are heading in the right direction. And Zion, again, we're not going to do the Zion offseason picks, and he looks like he slimmed down, things like that. But being in the gym with him, like, he looks like he's in the shape that he was to end the season. And everyone's going to knock Zion's season last year and say he only played 30 games yet again. But Garrick, like, again, we all knew what it was as soon as Zion got hurt with the hamstring in like November. The Pelicans were so far behind that the likelihood of them catching up was so low. And we talk about, like, they're doubling down on Zion and believing in him as the best player, the franchise player moving forward. Didn't happen like this summer. I think that happened a while ago. I think Zion could have probably played like 20 more games last season. Like, hands down. Definitely. Like the last 7 games of the season. The last time we saw Zion, he packed up in Minnesota, fell on his back, and scored like 40 points in 28 minutes. Like, that's the last time. And then he was shut down for the season. Like, I don't think that he was as injured the back half of the season as the Pelicans' availability or return to conditioning may have led you to be. And so I think he's in a different mindset. Like, you've really heard the narrative behind closed doors change around him, around how he's been different in the past 12, 18 months. And I think you're starting to see more and more of that together. Well, how do you feel about the Pelicans' health situation? Obviously, monitoring the Derrick Queen.
Yeah, man, it is crazy. I've heard some crazy things about the Pelicans. And listen, this is coming. You know, we try to be as in the middle as we can, right? The Pelicans are not a perfect team. They're not going to win the championship this year. We all know that, right? But to look me in my face and to tell me that Portland should be better than the Portland Trail Blazers should be better than the Pelicans, like, no questions asked, like, that's just a statement. We should just accept this fact. It tends to get a little bit of pouring on, you know, just to kind of pour on for the sake of pouring on. And again, the Pelicans are not a perfect team. They're not going to win a championship this year. They're probably not going to be this knockdown, drag out team. They're not the OKC Thunder. They're not any of that. But this team has talent on it. And there is no way to look at the team and say, well, no, they don't have talent on it, because they do, right? They have, you know, shooting off the dribble. They have supposed to be some of the better shooters in Jordan Hawkins and Trey Murphy, and Saddiq Bey is a pretty good shooter. And like, you have a superstar, you have role players. around him. Like you have all the things you need for the team. Now, obviously, coming into this season, DeJounte Murray's going to be out. You know, you have Herb Jones recovering from surgery. You have Trey Murphy recovering from surgery. Derrick Queen is going to be recovering from surgery. So the fact that you're seeing these guys, I think, is a good sign. But I do think, you know, if we've learned anything over these past couple of years covering this team, reevaluate it and should be available. That just means you're going to hear something else in 2 weeks. And maybe you hear that they'll be clearing to come back in a week. Or maybe you'll hear that they'll be reevaluated in another 2 weeks. And so I do think, like, you want to make sure that these guys are recovering well and staying away from any other type of injury whatsoever, because you're going to need Herb. You're going to need Trey Murphy. You're going to need these guys to come in and be ready to hit the ground running. Because, again, that unprotected pick is out there. So there is no, you can't BS behind a pick or whatever the case. This is all hands on deck this season, and it has to be that way. And for better or for worse, for me, I told you, I think that this is a good time to do this, because at some point you can't just keep walking this team with their hands, holding their hands. Like, at some point you have to put the onus on these guys. You have to start getting some tangible answers about, is this the right iteration of the Pelicans, or do you need to pivot or do whatever the case is? And so this is as good as an opportunity. Zion is coming off. There is no injury that we know of. He's been visible. He's been in New Orleans. He's been at the Pelicans Summer League games. He's been visible. And so, this is an opportunity for him to grab this franchise and this team and his career and his season and everything else that you can think, grab it all by the horns and take it into his own hands. Because this team, if you look at it, up and down the West, and I get it, the West is, what it is. You have OKC, you have Houston, who's supposed to be good. You have Denver still there, right? You have Minnesota, who've gone to the conference finals the last 2 years. But all of those teams, the Clippers have added, they got the expendables together. Like, there are a lot of good teams. But if you look at all of these teams outside of really OKC, and we'll see with Houston, every team has flaws. None of these teams are the Kevin Durant, Steph Curry Warriors, or the Big Three Miami Heat, or the Spurs with Tim Duncan and Kawhi Leonard. None of these teams are that, right? All of these teams can be gotten. The difference between the 2 seed last year and like the 10 seed or the 9 seed last year was like 4 games, right? Like 3-4 games. So this isn't like some, obviously OKC is the standard in the bar, but everything else is up for grabs. And if you look at these teams and you say, okay, who has the better stars, right? You see what Zion does when available. You can put him up against, whoever you want to put him up against outside of Jokic, obviously, but you can put him up against, what Kawhi has done in the last couple of years, or, what Ant has done in the regular season in the last couple of years. You can put him up against that. You put the second tier, star out there with Jamal Murray and Trey Murphy and, Rudy Gobert and Trey Murphy, or whatever the case is. You look at the defenders. You got Herb Jones on one who's a first team all defense. Like, you have the firepower to go up with this team. And I close this by saying, your reputation is what your reputation until it isn't. And the only way it becomes it's not your reputation is that this team, starting with Zion and Trey and Herb, if they change it, they have to be the ones to change this. Because for the Pelicans to have guys, if you ask any team, any executive, would you take Zion for a trade for some flotsam kind of trade? Hell yeah, they'll take Zion. Well, would you take Trey Murphy? Hell yeah, they'll take Trey Murphy. Would you take Herb Jones on this contract? Hell yeah, you'll take Herb Jones. Hell, would you take Yves Missi on this contract? Would you take Jordan Poole, for an expiry? All of these guys are, you take them on another team. Jeremiah Fears, Derik Queen, lottery picks. Would you take those right now? Yeah, they would. And so, for them to have all this talent up and down the floor, up and down the roster, and to still be regarded as the 13th, the 14th, the 12th team in Portland should be better. That is because of health and the reputation of this franchise. And the only way that changes is with winning, is with putting together consistent wins, consistent stops, and coming. And it starts with coming into training camp in shape and ready to hit the ground. Damn the Derrick Queen injury. Nobody's going to feel sorry for you in that pick that's going out the door. You have to lock in and you have to come into this season ready to change all of this narrative. And it starts with number one, coming into the season ready to go. Not none of that. Wait till 10, 15, 20 game of Zion. You have to be ready game one when it tips to be the best version of you. And I promise you, everybody else will follow.
Right. And I couldn't agree more. I think you hit it on the head in terms of just what the situation is, right? Until you win games, people are going to look at the recency bias. Like the year before, it was like, well, the Pelicans are a dark horse if things shake right. And now they're on the other side of that because things didn't shake right last season. And to your point, like a lot of it's going to come from everyone loves Trey Murphy, but like, can he ascend to he's knocking on the door of an all-star? Because if that's the case, you have two all-stars on the roster that are in their, not even in their 25 years old. That's something that you can say that a lot of West teams can. I see Charles in the comments saying, hey, will you guys do a show about potential starters rotation? Trust me, this summer we will have a lot of conversations about internal growth on this Pelicans team because that's what they're reliant upon. But as far as firepower, you did hit on that. I wanted to touch on that. Something we mentioned in terms of this team was that they needed to get bigger, right? Like they just felt like a small team. Sometimes it felt soft because they were getting punked. And overall, like I think objectively you can say they can. CJ McCollum, Jordan Poole, if you want to say that's a like size player, like 163, 164, one's 200 pounds, one's 190 pounds. They're about what and what. But I think Jordan Poole is much more athletic and much more younger at this point, right? He's giving you a steal a game, which CJ hasn't done in quite some time, right? It's his first year in New Orleans. And I think Jordan Poole can compete if put in a situation where he's asked to compete, right, on the defensive end. It's not that he's lacking in explosiveness or athleticism. It's just he doesn't always give it, right? And again, like I look at both Troy Weaver and Joe Dumars. When you go get guys that you want for your team, part of it is how do they fit with the remaining pieces of your roster? But the other part of it is what impact do you have on getting the most out of that player, right? Like Saddiq Bey coming off an injury, Jordan Poole coming off a weird situation in Washington. Like you're bringing those guys in to change the culture. It starts with how do you press the right button on them to make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing so that Jeremiah Fears falls in line, so that Derrick Queen falls in line, and you create your own culture there. Let's call CJ and Jordan Poole an equal swap. Kelly Olynyk, Kevon Looney, probably an equal swap in terms of size, right, altogether. But then you go Bruce Brown and Saddiq Bey, you got bigger. Brandon Boston and Micah Peavy, you got bigger. Jeremiah Robinson Earl, God bless him, to Derrick Queen, you got bigger. Alfred Payton to Jeremiah Fears. Again, Jeremiah Fears is probably one of the smallest guys in this class, right? So the majority of your roster got bigger, but here's the big one. Antonio Reeves was cut, and now Derrick Queen is out. You still got an extra spot. That I feel like you have to go find another front court player for this team in order to go in feeling like you can battle. Because I think if Summer League was any indication, when you got these guys picking up 94 feet from the first moment of the game, because they saw what happened in the finals when the Pacers and the Thunder were battling each other out. I think that's what the league is about to look like moving forward. I think there's going to be way more competitive from a defensive standpoint early in the year because the NBA is letting a little physicality go, which I like and I enjoy, right?
Chauncey Billups even said it. They were interviewing him on the sideline, and they asked him, it was like, is this something that you think the NBA is going to do? He was like, well, I don't know about the NBA, but for sure, we're going to be doing it, picking up people 94 feet to start the game. And if, Chauncey Billups and the Portland Trailblazers, obviously they have Drew there now, but like, if those guys are going to be doing it, and you saw it in the finals, I think that this is something that the NBA is going to be doing. You're going to be seeing a lot more of that in the NBA.
Right. So if you look at just the changes in the rosters, objectively, you could say the Pelicans got bigger. To your point about firepower, the narrative going into last season was that the Pelicans had too many guys that could dribble the ball. The Pelicans had too many guys and not enough ball, right? You had Zion, you had B.I., you had DeJounte, you had CJ. But then it's like, well, then the Pelicans don't have enough firepower once those people are gone. So how do you balance the two? Well, if last year you had those four as guys that could create their own shot, right? Going in the season, you did not think that Trey Murphy was consistently creating his own shot, much less when walking into games as the one option and two option most of the time, right? You didn't know that. So going into this season, Zion, obviously, you feel comfortable that Trey Murphy will at least pick up where he left off. I'm not saying he takes another huge jump in terms of his on-ball creation or all-ball playmaking. I mean, you would hope so, right? And the Pelicans need that to happen, but I'm not even saying that. You felt comfortable where he left off. Jordan Poole, 20 points per game. You know he can score, right? Derrick Queen, that's the big one, right? That's the one that I think he's going to be a very impactful rookie, at least offensively, for this team, but that's something you didn't have last season. This is the question you and I have been talking about. We talked about kind of all summer league. Jeremiah Fears kind of showed, again, that his ability to get to the rim, his ability to get to the free throw line as in summer league, and obviously is much different once you get to the NBA. And the reason you drafted him was his ability to score and to create for himself and other people. But like, I also think there's like an element of Jose where like, just because like me watching him through the Puerto Rico lens last summer with the Olympics and how free he played, where like, can you get to like a CJ McCollum type level off the bench where you are a threat offensively every single play? Because Jose kind of goes through his ups and downs of confidence offensively where he can't miss. And then there's other times he misses a couple and he kind of gets timid. And you just can't have that as a point guard, right? Especially one who's not like a traditional point guard. I think Jose's more of a combo point guard. But like, between him and Jeremiah Fears, can you get someone that can give you consistent offense off the bench? And like, for me personally, who is a better person for Jeremiah Fears to just get annoyed by all training camp long than Jose Alvarado? Like, Jose is fighting for the same minutes that Jeremiah Fears is fighting for, and they're kind of fighting for the same role. And so that battle in training, like, I can't wait. I think there are going to be fights. There are going to be explicits thrown, and I think that's healthy, and I think that's good for the team. What are your thoughts on like, do you think out of Derrick Queen, Jose Alvarado, Jeremiah Fears, you can get at least one of them to be a consistent offensive engine?
But see, this is what I mean, Raph. Like, you just named 3 players that, like, yeah, you could try it and find a way to generate some offense outside of, like you said, Zion, Trey. You have Jordan Poole, right? Like, so, like, let's just say like those guys are like, you're for sure those guys are going to get some buckets, some version of buckets. And then you just said, you know, can you get something out of Jeremiah Fears and Jose and Derrick Queen, right? I say, can you get something out of Herb Jones? What about Saddiq Bey? What about Carlo Makovich? Could you get some offense out of that? There's just so many different, and if this is where coaching comes into play, because again, as a coach, I see it as like, there's so many different offenses you can run. You can run point Zion, right? You can run Trey Murphy offense with like a big and maybe some other shooters and a ball handler, right? But let's say you're talking about just the bench, right? You should be able to find some offense between like a Jordan Hawkins roving offense for a couple of plays here, or some Saddiq Bey pin down dribble handoffs with a big 2-man game with him and Derrick Queen. Can you get some Herb Jones pick and pop with Carlo Makovich, because Herb has a little bit of playmaking and off the dribble stuff as well. So that's what I mean about the team should have a lot of options. So yeah, you should be able to get some consistent offense, whether it's the same person over and over again, whether Derrick Queen is a 12, 14 point per game scorer, you know, every single time out. But between Derrick Queen and Jordan Hawkins and Saddiq Bey and Jeremiah Fears and Jose Alvarado and Carlo Makovich, you should be able to generate 25 to 30 points just from those people alone, like some kind of groupings of them. Maybe some nice Jeremiah Fears got it going and he drops 10 points in a quarter. Maybe Hawk has one of those quarters where we see him hit 3 threes in a, you know, on a possession, and boom, there's 9 points. That's not out of the realm of possibility. What happens if Carlo has a good shooting night and goes 2 for 5, 3 for 6 from the 3-point line, right? Like, what happens then? What happens if Saddiq Bey goes 4 for 10 from the 3-point line because he's a volume 3-point shooter? So you should be able to generate bench offense, secondary offense from these tertiary guys to go along with what you expect to get 20, 25 each game from Zion, 20, 23 each game from Trey Murphy, at least 20 points from Jordan Poole, and then just keep it afloat, because now after a while, at some point in time, you'll be getting a 17, 18 point per game guy coming back off of his injury, who's going to at least be able to, he might not be able to be as explosive as DeJounte Murray, might not be as explosive, might not be able to push off and make those, but he is a thinking man, right? He is a thinking man. He plays the game cerebrally, right? So you should be able to generate. We saw one of the best offensive outputs of the season come from a Elfrid Payton-led team where he had 21 assists. There is more than one way to skin a cat, more than one way to win an NBA basketball game. Sometimes you got to have your stars go for 25, 30 every night, and they just have to carry it, but it's not going to happen that time. So can you get Jeremiah Fears going on offense? Derrick Queen going on offense? Can Kevon Looney get you 2 or 3 offensive rebounds, kickouts to Jordan Hawkins threes, to Saddiq Bey threes, to Herb Jones corner threes? Like, you should be able to generate some points off of that, and that's where the creativity from the coaching staff is going to have to come. Willie and James Borrego, listen, you can laugh and joke about it. There is opportunity for offensive growth from this team, from up and down the roster, and it is going to be on them to harness that and not just rely on dribble handoffs between Trey and Zion after one pick, and if that don't work, it's cook that boy offense. That's without cook that boy, cook him, cook that boy. We don't need all of that all the time. It's good sometimes. You have guys to do that, shot creators and Jordan Poole and Zion and Trey and those guys. But you want to be able to generate some offense. You saw in the finals, sometimes it was Aaron Nesmith, sometimes it was Andrew Nembhard, sometimes Obi Toppin had a 25-30 game, sometimes it was Lou Dort, sometimes it was Jalen Williams, most times it was Shea. Like, there was just a lot of different options to go for offense at certain points in time, and you got to be able to utilize these guys and put them into positions where they can be successful and help your team, float offensively.
Right. And again, to your point, there's a lot of things that, like, yeah, there's a lot of question marks and there's a lot of possibilities, but like, you don't need them all to hit. Like, if a couple of them, the good thing about this Pelicans team is that the oldest player is Kevon Looney, who's 29 years old, which means most of these players haven't hit their peak. Most of them haven't developed into who they're going to be as players. So in theory, they all should be getting better from year to year, and you should be expecting a leap from year to year going up into this point. And so if one of them helps, like, again, I'm a believer in Jordan Hawkins. I know last season was a tough season for him, but the way that he really played, and with the back injury and all that, but the way he really played in that freshman year, I just think his skill set next to Zion, next to Trey, next to it's just so valuable if he can start to hit shots. And again, it's good to see him in the gym and looking healthy and things like that. But I think he's so pivotal, and we'll talk about him later in the summer and things like that. But there's just so many of those small niches that, again, to your point, if you go up and down the roster and you just take even the bench and you go to other teams and be like, yeah, would you like the Lakers just signed Marcus Smart after a buyout, and everyone's like, man, Marcus Smart, that's gonna go be their number one, their stud defender. It's like, but Herb Jones is on the team, and so like, people are looking for playable guys that have a certain impact that they can share, and everyone on this roster, you kind of know what that is, and you're looking to take that next step. Now, that's the scoring side of it. I think in order for the Pelicans to get where they want to go and to be the team that they need to be in order to be successful, they've got to be a good defensive team. And it starts, to your point, with Zion and with Trey Murphy. Again, I look at OKC and I say, man, Shea, he's not the best defender in the league, but he holds his own on the defensive end. And look at J-Dub. He's a great defender on the other side. I look at the Celtics the year before. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, they're both good defenders. Trey Murphy and Zion both have the athleticism. They both can jump out the gym to be good defenders, right? And you've seen spurts of it with Trey, and you've seen, especially last season with Zion, where he was a plus defender. Like, he was taking on the Kawhis. He was taking on the best matchups every single night in his 28 minutes that he was allowed to play. But I think if those two, and they've talked about it, they on record, off record, I'm sure behind the closed doors, if those two step up to the mantle, then you become a team that can guard 1 through 5. Again, like Jordan Poole, in a perfect world, Jordan Poole is probably your 6th man, right? And DeJounte Murray is the guard who's a two-way guard that can go both sides and things like that. But that's not the perfect world you live in, right? And you have to adaptable. So can Jordan Poole be serviceable on the defensive end? Can some of these guys that are more offensive be serviceable on the defensive end? The other thing I look at is like year 2 Yves Missi and year 2 Carlo Makovich just have to play stronger. They both had really good rookie campaigns, and both of them, flashed in certain aspects all throughout the year. But like the common denominator in both of them outside of confidence is just playing stronger like centers, right? More and more teams are rolling out these double big lineups. So you need those 2 guys in particular to be your rim protection night in, night out, and be able to hold down the court at any particular time. What are some other things you're looking at from the defensive side of the ball? Because this is going to be the biggest question for the team. I think even people who are like poo-pooing on a Pelicans right now can look at the roster and be like, oh, yeah, they can score. They got a lot of guys that can score. But everyone's going to look at it and be like, how the hell are they going to stop anybody? What are your thoughts on how the Pelicans kind of focus during this lull to say we need to come back and lock up on the defensive end?
Yeah, well, it's going to help to get Herb Jones back. That's going to be the first step into to turning this defensive this mess that was last season around. It's going to be him coming back and being the quarterback of the defense. And again, I think with Herb making first team all defense the year before, and then not having this injury-riddled season like the rest of the team, I think Herb has kind of gotten a little bit underrated about how good he is defensively. And I think he's going to have to come back and kind of establish that again, that he is one of the premier defenders in the league. And I think the Pelicans feel good enough about his recovery, and that's why you saw him. You was going to give him that regardless, but I think if
let me ask you this question. Honestly, and maybe I'm off base. Tell me if I am. After watching last season, both when Herb was out the lineup, came back in real quick, and then got hurt again, I feel like Herb's impact on the defensive end is almost just as impactful as Zion on the offensive end. Like when he's on the court, the whole team just operates a little bit different. Like it's a Draymond type effect. Like just with him on the court, everyone's defense feels a little bit. Am I off base there?
No. He what he does is he locks everybody into place defensively, right? And what I mean by that is, when Herb is out there, that the best player, he might still go, but it's going to be a tough night for him. And that you can depend on Herb to be there defensively every time. So everyone else is kind of relaxed to play the position, to play the roles and positions they need. I call it's like the Rudy Gobert effect, just through the wing side, right? When Rudy Gobert is on the floor, Donovan Mitchell has talked about it, before their breakup, about when he's out there, everyone can play a little bit more physical because you have rim protection behind you. And that makes that rises the tide on the defensive side of the ball. Herb Jones is like that, right? Like he's there. And so I know if I can just stay in front of my guy and I can just guard my guy, like Herb has that taken care of, and he's going to communicate. If you're out of ways, you can watch games with Herb Jones in it as he's communicating, telling people, you go here, you move there, I'm here. Like even before offensive plays start going, he's already scouting out the play on the floor. And so like those are when you're missing that, and now it slides down to Trey, who's in the middle of trying to take a step offensively, and now is stepped to be the number 1 option, number 2 option on a night and out basis. And now you're also asking, well, look, you also got to guard the best player as well. It's just not conducive for Trey Murphy, the player that he is, to have that kind of responsibility up front. And that's why when they interviewed Trey about Herb's contract, he said he's such a pivotal part of our team. But because it sounds like just, that's what teammates say, but he's not lying. You've seen this team without Herb Jones. It is not a good defensive team, no matter who's out there. And so you have to have him plug in first. And then behind that, like you mentioned, it's going to be Zion and Trey taking the next step up to be great defensively consistently, right? We saw Zion kind of play his way into that physique, into that physical condition where he could be that defensive lockdown. And I mean, there were times where he was flying across the floor. I always go back to that Chicago game, and I go back to that Timberwolves game where he looked like one of the top 5 players on the two-way players on the floor. He was sitting down in the defensive stand, sliding his feet, switching, going help over for chase down blocks, getting in the passing lane. Everybody knows his favorite play is to have Herb or whoever have the dribble, the ball handler dribbling to one side, and then he turned and Zion's on the other side of the road. Like that, you have to be in good condition and good timing to make those plays. And those are the ones, like, that is the kind of stuff that's going to get the Pelicans in transition, because if the Pelicans play the way that they should, their best asset should be them playing in transition, should be them turning the ball over and running with Jordan Poole and Jeremiah Fears and Zion and Trey and Herb and Yves Missi. Like, that is how they should play. And so you get some of that from starting on the defensive side of the ball. And so, getting Herb back and having Zion and Trey understand that, again, all chips are to the front of the table right now, and you have to be able to lock in on both sides of the floor. You have Herb, who's going to be a great defensive security blanket, but you can't be lax either. Like, you can't be lax either. And I think, the final step for that will, like you said, the upgrade for Yves and Carlo. I think seeing Yves put on that much weight, and again, watching from the broadcast before going out there, you can see, even they were saying, like, Yves Missi has gotten bigger. And when I saw him in person, I was like, okay, that guy's a little bigger, bigger, obviously bigger this season. And now he's going to play Euro ball. He's going to play for his national team. And so hopefully he's continuing to work on that and work on his body and stay in that conditioning. But him getting bigger, and again, Carlo is the one you haven't seen, but hopefully he's getting bigger and getting stronger, because those are your rim protectors. And if you have a guy like Yves back there rim protected, and you have Herb Jones at the point of defense, and have kind of like Zion being a rover to help when need be, like that should be a decent defense. Now, you're going to have to cover up for whatever happens with Jordan Poole and Derrick Queen and Jeremiah Fears. You're going to have to cover that side up. But even guys like Michael Peavy, guys like Saddiq Bey, like, you should be able to get those guys. Kevon Looney he's not a shot blocker, but he's a rim deterrent. Like, he'll stand there with his hands up and be 6'10", 6'11". So, like, you have other guys that should be able to supplement when those guys got to come out. Obviously, Jose and his tenacity. Like, you'll have other ways to do it. But, this team, the defensive side of the ball is going to be where they're gonna make their season. And I think, if this team can lock in and get it together, there's no reason why they can't be an average, maybe even slightly above average defensive team, especially when you fold in DeJounte Murray and whenever he gets healthy as well.
Right. I'll go you one further. Like, again, prior to this season, the Pelicans were in the top 10 in defense. And again, you lost CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, but Dyson Daniels, right, and Larry Nance and Najee Marshall. But, like, to your point, like, Saddiq Bey, again, you got to see what he looks like coming off the ACL, however go look good. But he's a good defender. And I think Michael Peavy, just from what I saw just through his college tape and through the summer league, and I know it's different, you got a guard NBA talent, but he has the body. Like, when we were watching in the huddle, like, Michael Peavy was looking down to basically everyone but Derrick Queen. Like, it was funny to watch. Like, he has the body of an NBA wing. And I think that's going to help him. To your point, like, after those guys left, Najee, Dyson, Larry Nance, the Pelicans never refilled them. Like, they had Jeremiah Robinson Earl, Jamal Cain, and random guys off the street, but none of them were, like, bigger guys that could take that. You saw Keon Brooks come in and stand in front of somebody and not get posted up. And you're like, oh, man, maybe he's the answer, right? And so, like, I think by refilling the well in that area, just from your point, it's going to take the effort and it's going to take the locked-in nature of the starting 10 or the rotation anyway. But now you've built in backup plans when things go awry, so that you always can put guys on the court that can lock up. So that being said, the lull period is here. There's going to be some week guys are going to go across the country, do whatever. Eurobasket's now for another month. So, WNBA is all you have. that's I mean, unless you're in the F1 and golf, that's all you have. But with that being said, again, I don't think the Pelicans bombed the offseason and they shouldn't even tip the ball off before it gets started. I just want to see them get to training camp without any more injuries and see where they can go from there and see once you roll the ball out what the product looks like. To your point, I think the coaching is going to be huge on this team. And if Willie Green has done anything, he's done a good job of at least pulling out the defensive end from some of his star players that haven't been known for defense. So, again, you shall see in a couple months. What you got left for the people, Garrett, as we wrap up?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. I want to say see you, Cole, chilling. Appreciate you, Slade, Serenity, everybody pulling up. Charles, I appreciate y'all pulling up. Yeah, man, it's gonna be a interesting season coming up. I mean, there's got to be at least 4 national podcasts right now that are just like, yeah, the Pelicans shouldn't even play the season. What a terrible way. And it's
relegate
just like,
them to the G League.
Yeah, it's just like, all right, man, like, you know, they're not perfect. They're not the greatest team ever, but good Lord, man, they got talent. So it's going to be very interesting to see what's going on, man. But as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_basketball, no E. That's on Twitter, Instagram, X, wherever you get your social media. And most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys next time.